Cop slapped a black woman in court. Seconds later, she took the judge's seat. Before we dive into today's story, please press the subscribe button. Also, drop a comment from which city you're watching. We love hearing where our community is tuning in from. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the story. Those words would haunt Officer Thompson for the rest of his life. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Judge Anya Sharma approached the courthouse in her civilian clothes, a briefcase in hand, holding today's case files. Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in. Officer Thompson blocked her path, sneering down with pure contempt. His open palm cracked against her face, so hard her head snapped sideways. The briefcase flew from her grip, legal documents scattering like confetti across the courthouse steps. Thompson grabbed her by the throat, slamming her back against the stone wall. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. He twisted her arms behind her back, metal handcuffs biting into her wrists. Other officers gathered, laughing and recording with their phones. Anya's jaw throbbed, but her eyes stayed. Locked on the bronze nameplate above the courthouse entrance, the Honorable Judge A. Sharma presiding. 20 feet away from her own courtroom, she was being brutalized by the very system she served. Have you ever seen instant karma this brutal? Inside the courthouse, Officer Thompson straightened his uniform. He had done this dance many times: spin the story, control the narrative, make himself the hero. The system always believed cops over criminals, especially when those criminals looked like her. Your Honor, Thompson began, his voice steady and practiced. I was conducting routine security protocols when I encountered a suspicious individual attempting to breach courthouse security. He gestured toward Anya, now sitting in handcuffs. At the defendant's table, a purple bruise blooming across her left cheek. The temporary judge, Judge Harrison, a pale, thin man in his 60s, nodded approvingly. And what exactly did you observe, Officer Thompson? Well, sir, she was dressed inappropriately for court proceedings, carrying what appeared to be stolen legal documents. Thompson's eyes gleamed as he warmed to his fabrication. When I approached, she became verbally aggressive, using profanity and making threats. From the gallery, 2 other officers, Davis and Peterson, exchanged knowing looks. They had heard Thompson tell similar stories dozens of times, different faces, same script. She kept screaming about being someone important. Thompson continued, his voice dripping with disdain. These people always claim to be lawyers, judges, senators, anything to avoid accountability. I've seen this playbook before, Your Honor. Judge Harrison leaned forward, clearly engaged. Did she attempt to flee or resist arrest? Absolutely. The defendant became physically combative when I attempted to place her in protective custody. I was forced to use the minimum necessary force to ensure public safety. Thompson's hand trembled almost imperceptibly, the only crack in his polished performance. The courthouse stenographer's fingers flew across her machine, capturing every lie. In the back row, a young law clerk frowned, something nagging at her memory. Officer Davis, the prosecutor called. Can you corroborate Officer Thompson's testimony? Davis stood, his uniform pressed to perfection. Yes, ma'am. I witnessed the entire incident. The defendant was clearly attempting to circumvent security protocols. Officer Thompson handled the situation with remarkable professionalism. And the alleged assault? Judge Harrison inquired. Thompson's jaw tightened. Your Honor, I used only the force necessary to subdue an aggressive individual who was threatening courthouse security. The defendant's injuries, if any, resulted from her own resistance to lawful commands. He pulled out his phone, swiping to a video that conveniently started mid-confrontation. I have partial footage here, though unfortunately my body cam malfunctioned this morning. The lie rolled off his tongue like honey. How convenient, Anya murmured, speaking for the first time. I'm sorry? Judge Harrison raised an eyebrow. Nothing. Your Honor, she replied calmly, though her eyes blazed with controlled fury. Thompson continued his performance. What we're seeing here is a classic case of someone playing the victim card after being caught breaking the law. She was trespassing on government property, carrying suspicious documents, and when confronted with her criminal behavior, she immediately claimed discrimination. The prosecutor, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Wallace, nodded sympathetically. Officer Thompson, in your 15 years of service, have you encountered similar situations? Unfortunately, yes. There's a pattern here. Certain individuals believe they're above the law, that rules don't apply to them. They use accusations of racism to deflect from their own criminal behavior. Thompson's voice rose with righteous indignation. It's honestly insulting to the real victims of discrimination. Several people in the gallery, mostly white courthouse employees, nodded in agreement. The defendant claims she was going to work, Thompson said, making air quotes mockingly, but she couldn't provide any employment verification, any identification, or any legitimate reason for being in a restricted area of the courthouse. Peterson, the third officer, stepped forward. If I may add, Your Honor, the defendant was carrying what appeared to be confidential legal documents. We suspect she may have been involved in some kind of identity theft or fraud scheme. Fraud scheme. Judge Harrison looked intrigued. Yes, sir. Thompson jumped back in, sensing momentum. These documents had judicial letterhead, case numbers, and sensitive information. No legitimate citizen would have access to materials like this. We believe she may have been planning to impersonate court personnel. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. But Thompson pressed on, oblivious to the trap he was setting for himself. In my professional opinion, he concluded, this is simply another case of someone trying to game the system. She knows if she can make this about race, about alleged police brutality, she can distract from her actual crimes. He turned to face Anya directly, his eyes cold and contemptuous. These people think they can just waltz into any building, any courtroom, any space they choose, and when they're stopped, they scream discrimination. Well, not in my courthouse. Your Honor, Prosecutor Wallace added, the state recommends we proceed with charges of trespassing, resisting arrest, and assault on a police officer. The defendant's attempt to frame this as a civil rights issue is clearly a desperate defense strategy. Thompson allowed himself a small smile. This was going exactly as planned. Another case, another win, another reminder that the system worked the way it was supposed to. People knew their place or they learned it the hard way. Furthermore, he continued, emboldened by the supportive atmosphere, I want to emphasize that I showed remarkable restraint. The defendant was clearly unstable, possibly under the influence of narcotics. A lesser officer might have used much more significant force. Judge Harrison nodded gravely. Your professionalism is noted, Officer Thompson. In the defendant's chair, Anya sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap despite the handcuffs. Her expression remained calm, almost serene, but anyone looking closely would have noticed the slight upturn at the corners of her mouth. She was taking mental notes of every lie, every fabrication, every detail that would soon unravel Thompson's career and reputation. The officer had no idea he was testifying in front of the very person who had the power to destroy him. Is there anything else you'd like to add, officer? Judge Harrison asked. Thompson straightened his shoulders. Just that incidents like this remind us why we need strong law enforcement. Some people only understand authority when it's backed by force. The defendant learned today that actions have consequences. He had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. The prosecutor smiled confidently. The state rests its case against this defendant, Your Honor. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of criminal behavior and resistance to lawful authority. As Thompson stepped down from the witness stand, he caught Anya's eye one final time. He winked at her, a gesture of complete dominance, total victory. It would be the last moment of triumph in his entire career. The defendant may now present her statement, Judge Harrison announced, his tone suggesting this would be a mere formality. Before sentencing, Anya Sharma rose slowly from her chair, the handcuffs clinking softly as she moved. Despite the purple bruise on her cheek and the disheveled state of her clothes, she carried herself with an unmistakable dignity that made several people in the courtroom shift uncomfortably. "Thank you, Your Honor." Her voice was clear, controlled, and carried an authority that seemed to fill the entire room. "I appreciate the opportunity to address these allegations." Judge Harrison blinked. Something in her tone was unexpected, professional, in a way that didn't match the narrative he'd been presented. "First, I want to clarify several factual inaccuracies in Officer Thompson's testimony." Anya's eyes swept the courtroom methodically, landing on each person who had supported the officer's lies. "According to his statement, I was trespassing on government property. However, I was walking on a public sidewalk approaching the main entrance of this courthouse at approximately 8:47 a.m. She turned slightly, addressing Judge Harrison directly. "Your Honor, I'm sure you're familiar with the Supreme Court ruling in Hague versus Committee for Industrial Organization, which clearly establishes that public sidewalks adjacent to government buildings are traditional public forums where citizens have a constitutional right to be present." The stenographer's fingers paused mid-stroke. The prosecutor frowned. This wasn't the rambling, emotional outburst they'd expected from someone facing serious charges. "Furthermore," Anya continued, "Officer Thompson testified that I was carrying suspicious documents and suggested I was involved in identity theft. I'd like to examine that claim more closely." She gestured toward the evidence table where her scattered papers had been collected. "Those documents are indeed authentic legal materials. Specifically, they include pending case files, judicial memoranda, and administrative correspondence, all of which I have legitimate access to in my professional capacity." "Professional capacity?" Judge Harrison interrupted. "And what exactly is your profession, Miss Williams?" "Sharma," Anya corrected, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Dr. Sharma, and I think we'll get to my professional background shortly, Your Honor." Thompson felt a chill run down his spine. Something was very wrong with this picture. "Your Honor, if I may continue," Anya said, her voice taking on the cadence of someone completely comfortable in a courtroom setting. "Officer Thompson also testified that I became verbally aggressive and used profanity. I'd like to address that claim by invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent regarding any statements I may have made during the alleged incident." She paused, letting that sink in. "However, I will note that any statements I did make were in direct response to being physically assaulted without provocation, warning, or legal justification." The young law clerk in the back row sat up straighter. Something about this woman's voice, her mannerisms, seemed familiar. "Now, regarding the officer's claim that his body cam malfunctioned," Anya continued, and now there was steel in her voice. "Your Honor, I'm sure you're aware of the federal rules of evidence, particularly Rule 106, which allows for the introduction of summaries of voluminous records. I have reason to believe that comprehensive video and audio evidence of this morning's incident exists and will be made available to this court." Judge Harrison leaned forward. "What kind of evidence are you referring to?" "Your Honor, this courthouse has extensive security camera coverage, including high-definition cameras positioned at 15-foot intervals along the main approach. Additionally, the county maintains automatic backup systems for all officer body cam footage, regardless of claimed equipment malfunctions." The color drained from Thompson's face. He had forgotten about the courthouse security cameras in his rush to control the narrative. "I would like to formally request," Anya continued, "that this court issue a preservation order for all electronic surveillance data from this morning between 8:45 and 9:05 a.m., including but not limited to courthouse security footage, body cam backup files, and any mobile phone recordings that may have been made by officers present at the scene." Prosecutor Wallace stood abruptly. "Objection, Your Honor. The defendant cannot simply make evidentiary demands without proper legal representation." Anya turned to face the prosecutor with a look that made the woman take an involuntary step backward. "Your Honor, pro se defendants have the constitutional right to present evidence in their own defense under the Sixth Amendment. Additionally, Brady v. Maryland establishes the prosecution's obligation to preserve potentially exculpatory evidence." The silence in the courtroom was deafening. This was not how these cases usually went. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Miss Sharma, you seem unusually familiar with legal procedure. Do you have formal legal training? I have some experience with the judicial system, Your Honor. Anya's response was carefully neutral, but her eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like amusement. She walked as much as the handcuffs would allow to the evidence table and gestured toward her scattered belongings. Your Honor, I'd also like to address Officer Thompson's characterization of my presence here as suspicious or unauthorized. She pointed to a specific document among the papers. This is my daily court calendar, which shows I was scheduled to I was scheduled to appear in this building for legitimate business starting at 9 a.m. this morning. The bailiff, a large man named Henderson, who had worked in this courthouse for 12 years, suddenly went very still. He was staring at Anya with growing recognition and horror. Officer Thompson testified that I claimed to be someone important. Anya continued. I'd like to clarify that I never made any such claim. However, I did attempt to show him my identification, which he refused to examine before initiating his assault. She paused, surveying the courtroom. Your Honor, I have in my possession, despite Officer Thompson's violent interference, documentation that will conclusively establish both my identity and my legitimate reason for being at this courthouse this morning. Judge Harrison was beginning to look distinctly uncomfortable. What kind of documentation? Anya reached carefully into her jacket pocket. My judicial parking pass, issued by this courthouse's administrative office. My building access card, programmed with my judicial chamber's entry code, and my official identification. The bailiff Henderson suddenly stood up, his face pale as he recognized the woman he'd seen every day for the past 3 years. Your Honor, Anya said quietly, I believe there's been a significant misunderstanding about who exactly Officer Thompson assaulted this morning. She held up a leather credential wallet, and even from across the room, the gold judicial seal was clearly visible. Perhaps we should recess so that proper identifications can be verified, she suggested, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who was used to giving orders in courtrooms, not taking them. Judge Harrison stared at the credential, wallet, then at Anya's face, then at the bailiff, who was nodding grimly. Court will recess for 15 minutes, he said hoarsely. As the gavel fell, Thompson felt his world beginning to crumble around him. During the 15-minute recess, the courthouse buzzed with nervous energy. In a small holding room adjacent to the courtroom, Anya sat calmly while Bailiff Henderson fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking. Judge Sharma, he whispered, his voice thick with horror. Jesus Christ, Judge Sharma. I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you in civilian clothes, and when they brought you in like that. It's all right, Henderson, Anya replied softly. You weren't part of this, but I need you to do something for me. Anything, Your Honor. Anything at all. I need you to go to my chambers quietly and bring me my judicial robes, the black ones with the gold trim. And Henderson, she looked him directly in the eye, bring my gavel too, the engraved one from my swearing-in ceremony. Henderson nodded vigorously and hurried out, leaving Anya alone. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, centering herself. This morning she had been Judge Anya Sharma, respected jurist, protector of constitutional rights, guardian of justice. In the span of 15 minutes, she had been transformed into a victim, a defendant, a woman in handcuffs facing trumped-up charges. But now it was time to reclaim what was hers. Her phone, confiscated during the arrest, was now returned. It buzzed with missed calls and frantic texts from her clerk, Janet Morrison. Judge Sharma, where are you? The Peterson hearing is in 30 minutes. Your Honor, the attorneys are here asking about delays. Judge Sharma, please call me back. There are rumors that something happened. Anya typed back quickly. Tell the Peterson attorneys we'll reschedule. Something more important has come up. Clear my afternoon calendar. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she was looking for. Chief Judge Eleanor Vance, the administrative head of the entire judicial district. Eleanor, it's Anya. Anya, thank God. We heard there was some kind of incident. are you all right? I've been better. Eleanor, I need you to do something for me, and I need you to do it without asking questions right now. Of course. Whatever you need. I need you to contact the courthouse security office and tell them to immediately preserve and copy all surveillance footage from this morning between 8:45 and 9:15 a.m. All cameras, all angles. And Eleanor, make sure there are multiple copies stored in different locations. There was a pause. Anya, what exactly happened this morning? A police officer named Thompson just spent an hour testifying under oath about how he heroically subdued a dangerous criminal who was trespassing on courthouse property. Anya's voice was steady, but there was an edge to it that Chief Judge Vance had never heard before. And the dangerous criminal was me, Eleanor. On my way to work, he didn't just arrest me. He assaulted me in front of this courthouse, called me a filthy animal, and told me I belonged in a cage. The silence on the other end of the line stretched for nearly 30 seconds. Jesus Christ, Anya, are you? What do you need? Should I call the FBI, the Attorney General's office? Not yet. Right now, I need those surveillance recordings secured, and I need you to make some phone calls. I want every case Officer Thompson has testified in over the past 5 years pulled and reviewed. Every single one. Consider it done. But Anya, you can't handle this case yourself. There's a conflict of interest. Eleanor, in 10 minutes, I'm returning to that courtroom in my judicial robes. Officer Thompson will learn exactly who he assaulted and who has the authority to make sure he pays the price. Henderson returned with her robes and gavel. As Anya slipped on the black fabric, she felt the transformation from civilian to judge. The robes were her armor, a symbol of the justice she had sworn to uphold. She lifted her ceremonial gavel, its weight familiar in her hand. The words, "Justice is blind," but she sees all engraved on its handle. Henderson, she instructed, adjusting her robes. Announce me properly. The Honorable Judge Anya Sharma, presiding. She looked at herself in the mirror. The bruise on her cheek was still there, but it now served a new purpose, a symbol of the system's brokenness and the justice about to be restored. When court resumes, Officer Thompson will learn what justice really means. All rise. Henderson's voice boomed, and the courtroom snapped to attention. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Anya Sharma presiding. The words were a thunderbolt. Officer Thompson froze. Judge Harrison, still in Anya's chair, went pale. The prosecutor's jaw dropped. Anya entered, her robes flowing, her demeanor a portrait of authority. She took her place behind the bench, her bench, and sat slowly, her eyes sweeping over the faces of everyone who was just beginning to grasp the gravity of the situation. Officer Thompson, she said quietly, her voice carrying the full weight of her power. You may remain standing. Thompson looked sick, his face a kaleidoscope of fear. Your Honor, Judge Harrison stammered. Judge Harrison, Anya interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. Thank you for your service. You may return to your own docket. I will handle this matter. Harrison fled the courtroom. Anya turned her full attention to Thompson, who was visibly shaking. Officer Thompson, she began. 2 hours ago you testified, under oath. Do you remember your testimony? Thompson could only nod. You said I was an entitled activist looking for a payday, and that people like me need to learn that actions have consequences. Do you recall those words? She pulled out a tablet and played security footage. It showed Anya calmly walking toward the courthouse before Thompson blocked her path. The audio was clear. Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in. The court watched in horror as his unprovoked attack unfolded. The slap, the grab, the handcuffs. His words echoing through the room. Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Do you see any aggression from the defendant here? Anya asked, pausing the video. Thompson remained silent. Now let's examine your claim that your body camera malfunctioned. She played another video from his own body cam, which had automatically uploaded to the cloud. Look at this uppity. Thinking she can just walk into my courthouse, he snarled. These people need to learn their place. Time to teach another lesson. The prosecutor, Sarah Wallace, frantically tried to gather her papers and distance herself from the unfolding disaster. "And here," Anya said, advancing the video, "we can see the moment Officer Thompson committed a felony assault against a federal judge." The words, "federal judge," hung in the air. Thompson's knees buckled. "But wait," Anya continued. "There's more." She played audio from another officer's body cam. His voice filled the courtroom, talking to a partner. "Dude's really going off on this one. Think she's actually somebody important like she keeps saying?" The partner replied, "Nah, man, look at her. Thompson knows what he's doing. Probably just another welfare queen trying to scam the system." Anya set down the tablet. "You asked me for employment verification. I have one." She gestured to the seal and her nameplate on the bench. "I have been the presiding judge of this courthouse for 23 years, Officer Thompson. Every case you have ever testified in has been under my authority." "Your Honor, I didn't know," Thompson whispered. "You didn't know because you didn't bother to look," Anya said, leaning forward. "You saw a black woman, and you made assumptions. You saw someone you thought was powerless, and you abused your power. For the past 6 months, I've been conducting an investigation into patterns of misconduct and racial bias in this department, working directly with the FBI's Civil Rights Division. You've been under investigation, and you just provided us with the most perfect evidence we could have hoped for." She lifted her gavel. "You said actions have consequences. You were right about that." The gavel came down with a thunderous bang. Thompson collapsed into a chair, his career and freedom now in tatters. Anya then began reading from Thompson's file. Complaint number 23, 2016. Dr. Michael Johnson, a prominent cardiologist, alleged you arrested him because you didn't believe a black man could live in his neighborhood. After 6 hours in jail, Johnson was released. "The department's finding on that complaint, Officer Thompson?" she asked. When he couldn't answer, she said, "Unsubstantiated." Chief Judge Eleanor Vance, in the front row, took notes, her expression grim. "Are you beginning to see a pattern?" Anya placed a large chart on an easel. "I cross-referenced your complaint history with your arrest statistics, and a fascinating pattern emerges. Over a 15-year career, Thompson's 1,250 arrests were disproportionately of people of color, 87%, despite them being a minority in his patrol area. His use of physical force was also lopsided. 63% of arrests involving people of color compared to just 12% of white suspects. Even more interesting," she continued, "of your 1,089 arrests of people of color, 432 were dismissed due to constitutional violations. That's a 40% dismissal rate. Officer Thompson, what we call that is a pattern of criminal behavior." Anya then revealed the financial cost. "Over the past 15 years, this county has paid out $2.3 million in settlements related to your conduct." Thompson croaked, "I was just doing my job." The judge pulled out his police oath and read it aloud. "I solemnly swear to faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of my office." She set it down. "Not selectively, not based on skin color. The system that protected you failed today, Officer Thompson, because you chose to assault someone who had the power to expose everything. It's time you learned your place." Returning to her bench, Anya looked out at the packed courtroom. "This morning began with a simple question. What happens when years of unchecked power create a person who believes they can assault a federal judge and face no consequences?" She picked up her gavel. "For 15 years you have terrorized this community. You have violated the constitutional rights of citizens whose only crime was existing while black or brown. Your greatest mistake wasn't any single act of brutality. Your greatest mistake was believing the system would always protect you, no matter how many lives you destroyed." Anya's voice dropped to a whisper. "You thought you were asserting your dominance over just another powerless victim. But I was never powerless. The only difference is that today, justice finally had a witness." The gavel came down with finality. "I find you guilty of assault in the first degree, assault on a judicial officer, deprivation of civil rights under color of law, and perjury. Your apology is 15 years and 47 complaints too late. Your remorse appears only because you were finally caught by someone with the power to hold you accountable. 6 months later, the ripple effects were profound. Thompson was serving a 25-year federal prison sentence without parole. The federal investigation he unwittingly triggered uncovered a web of corruption, leading to 12 officer terminations and criminal charges for 4 supervisors. The entire department was placed under federal oversight. The 432 tainted cases were reopened, and dozens of wrongfully convicted people were released. The county paid an additional $8.7 million in compensation to Thompson's victims, money that came directly from the police department's budget. The courthouse was renamed the Justice Sharma Federal Courthouse. Her verdict, viewed over 50 million times online, became a national phenomenon and a case study in institutional corruption. Perhaps the most powerful change was in the community itself. Citizens who had been afraid to report police misconduct began coming forward, leading to the creation of community oversight boards and a complete overhaul of police training. In the end, Thompson, a man who once terrorized a community, now spends his days in protective custody, finally understanding what it feels like to be powerless. Sometimes justice doesn't just knock, sometimes it comes down with a bang.